Pastor Troy.
Pastor Luke.
Hello.
Good to be here.
It's good to be back with you as we continue to roll on through the commandments. And today
you have a sticker on your shirt.
I do. Yeah.
You keep it on there.
Yep. It's from the third graders.
Yeah.
Rolling through the fourth and fifth commandments today. Again, maybe review some of the things we've talked about. You know, the first commandment is the basis for all the other commandments. We shall have no other gods. And how do we have no other gods? How do we fear, love, and trust in God above all other things? The rest of the commandments 2 through 10, tease that out. Help us, show us how we can fear, love, and trust in God above all things. And today, we're getting to the fourth and fifth commandments. So again, some more specific ways in which we live according to how God wants us to live, and that His will for us is really for our good. God's law is good for us.
He gives us life.
He does.
And so all these are for the protection and preservation of life, as well as even the flourishing of life. Mm-hmm. One other thing, Pastor Luke, is we're at a transition point. So last week, we had first, second, third commandments. We say vertical relationship with God, and now look out, we're getting ready for the horizontal relationships. All of them are centered in love for God, but then also to love our neighbor. And so the fourth commandment.
So horizontally, it deals with our relationships with other people.
Right.
Not so much with God, although God is definitely a part of it, but how do we love and care for those around us?
Well, because God has given us life in this way, and there are relationships. They do fit together, but these are more specifically about other people.
And God created us as human beings to be in relationship with other people.
Yeah.
And that ties directly to the fourth commandment.
Go.
So we're on page 81, going through the commandments and some of the questions. So page 81, fourth commandment. Honor your father and your mother. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not despise or anger our parents and other authorities, but honor them, serve and obey them, love and cherish them.
Yes.
So there we go. Created for relationships. One of the first relationships we have, probably the first relationship we have, is with our parents.
Yes.
Our father and our mother. And God has given us parents as our authority, and we are to honor them, to obey them.
Yeah, so not only are children meant to be a gift for their parents, parents are actually a gift for their children.
Yeah. Can a baby take care of him or herself?
It can, and that's one of the most beautiful things, and I was sharing with you just before we started about this, the beauty of caring for someone else, especially when they can't do anything else for you. Mm-hmm. But that ultimately is what God does for us. We can't pay God back, but we're created in God's image, and so we share that with others.
Yeah, and so if you look at the central thought there in the middle of page 81, it says, as Christians, we give parents special honor as God's representatives on earth, gifts of God through whom He gave us the gift of life. And so God cares for us through our parents.
Yes.
He blesses us through our parents. And not just parents, because Luther, he expands this to not just, we don't just obey our parents, but all authorities. Everyone who is in authority over us.
People in positions of authority, like pastors,
teachers,
police officers,
the government, if you have a job, your boss, things like that.
A doctor, a nurse,
yes,
a pharmacist,
older brother or sister.
I guess so. Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any siblings, but I take your word for it.
Well, I'm the oldest. So.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and so I think to look at it really broadly is these people are God's representatives on earth. Mm-hmm. So the government, the president, the Congress, the Senate, they're God's representatives on earth. They're for the benefit, not their own benefit, but for the benefit of the people whom they serve.
So God gives authority to various people in this world, various people in our lives.
Yes.
Why does He give this authority to parents or to the government or to teachers or pastors or whomever it might be? Why does God give this authority to these specific persons?
Because He loves us?
Yes. And authority is, again, it's not so much for the person in authority.
Right.
It's for the people that those in authority are meant to serve.
Yes.
So parents are meant to serve their children. The government is meant to serve, care for, take care of its citizens. Pastors are meant to care for, take care of their flock, members of the church.
Parents are, so believe it or not, children, kids, my own children, parents are there for the benefit of their children. It may not always feel like it, but they are there for their good, to protect them, to maintain order. Government is there for the benefit of the citizens. Pastors are here for the benefit of the congregation. Just in the same way, we're not Jesus, we're called to represent Jesus. We are not here to be served by the congregation, but we're literally servants. We're here to serve the congregation.
Yep.
But we are in a position, from a church perspective, of authority.
Yep. And, this, of course, we live in a fallen, sinful world.
Yeah.
And do people abuse their authority?
They do.
All the time. All the time. People abuse they use their power for self-serving purposes, selfish reasons, instead of caring for those around them. And so that's something to be mindful of, but that's not how God intended authority to operate. It's just a result of sinful people being sinful people.
There's an order, there's a structure. So just in a classroom, if the students should recognize, Lord willing, that the teacher is there for their benefit, but also they should be respectful of that teacher by listening when the teacher is talking, by doing the assignments. Also, they respect the teacher by respecting the other students, because if they don't, then it's just chaos. And I think if we're honest, that's not fun or good for anybody. So our God is a God of order who creates things in this way and puts people in places to do the things that he wants to happen.
To care for his creation.
Right.
So you wanted to look at question 56.
Yeah, the
so question 56 is on page 83.
Right. Well, I just translated it this way. What if I have a bad parent? Is that my problem or their problem? What do I do?
What do you do?
It might be it would be my problem.
It would be.
But maybe I'm making them bad.
Well, and I think we should acknowledge that there are bad parents.
Right.
Absolutely. We all know plenty of people.
No parent is perfect, but some have a lot more struggles than others.
And it's sad, and that's not the way that God intended things to be.
Right.
And so what do we do? What if we have a bad parent? Or, spread it out further, someone else in a position of authority who is bad in some way. An abusive parent, or a boss who is just awful, treats people terribly. What do we do in those kind of situations?
Well, this is really tough because it can make our life very difficult if people in positions of authority are not fair or loving or merciful, if they should be merciful. So we should do our best to obey them to the extent we can. I say to the extent we can because if our parent wants us to do something, let's say a parent, that's illegal, go help me rob a store. There might be a place where I say, I cannot do what you want me to do.
Yeah, because that breaks the seventh commandment.
It's explicitly illegal.
It goes against God's law.
Right. But if my parent says, you need to eat Brussels sprouts once a week because you need a balanced, nutritious diet, and I say, well, you're a crummy parent because you make me eat Brussels sprouts, I probably should still do my best to eat the Brussels sprouts. Now, eventually, when I get older and I'm in charge, then I'll eat whatever I want.
Yeah.
That's maybe too simple a thing. Or about bedtime. We've talked about bedtimes and things like that.
So again, certainly difficult at times, especially because, again, we're all sinful people, so it can be hard to obey God's law.
Right.
But again, God gives us parents. He places authority in various areas of our lives for our good. They're meant to be good things. And it is our job, our duty, to respect, obey, honor those in authority over us.
Well, God works through these people, and sometimes, blessedly, it's easier to see that than others. But the other thing that, at least in my life, let's say that my earthly father wasn't always there in the way that I would have liked him to. But God did provide other people. Maybe not my dad. Maybe it's my grandpa. Maybe it's my uncle. Maybe it's my friend's dad, my pastor, my teacher. someone else who does those things positively in a way that God still provided for my needs.
So God still takes care of us.
He still takes care of us.
It may not always seem like it, but God actually does love us and wants to care for us.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, we'll go ahead and move on to the fifth commandment.
Yeah. What is the fifth commandment?
So
Pastor
the fifth
Luke?
commandment, turn to page 85, again in the Catechism, is you shall not murder. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but help and support him in every physical need. And so if you look at the central thought there in the middle of page 85, as Christians, we look after our neighbors so that they may enjoy the life God has given them.
Or as it also says in there, God created us to care for other people.
Yeah.
Because God cares for us, He does this. We're created in His image. We should care for others. And I think the other thing that came out in this is, as you read through the meaning, and this happens in almost all of them, it's not simply don't do this. It is very much do this, because this is how God protects and preserves life.
Yeah.
And in a very specific way here. Note here one point, not so much trivia, but it is this is not thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not murder.
There is a difference.
There is a difference.
So, yeah, God created human life. He wants to preserve human life. But does obeying this commandment, and you were alluding to this, is obeying this commandment simply refraining from murdering other people?
Yeah, if only it were that simple. Well, hey, you know what? I've never broken this commandment because I've never murdered anyone. No, it's so much bigger than that. And so Jesus, and the way we know it's so much bigger than that, I think it's kind of built into the Old Testament anyway, but Jesus then specifically in, say, Matthew's Gospel, in the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, he just says, you've heard it said, you shall not murder, but I say to you, if you even, what does he say?
If you're angry with
If you're
your brother.
angry, not only should you not say awful things to someone else, he really says you ought to check
What you're
your
thinking.
brain's doing.
Yeah. If you hate somebody, you're breaking the fifth commandment. If you make fun of somebody, you are breaking the fifth commandment. If you say horrible things about somebody else, you're breaking the fifth. If you hit, if you in any way harm another person, you are breaking the fifth commandment.
Yeah.
So the fifth commandment is not just refraining from murdering someone, but also refraining from harming another person in any way.
God really wants us to love our neighbor.
Yes. And so that is the positive part of this commandment.
Yeah.
So how do we care for our neighbor? Well, we don't kill, we don't murder them. We don't harm them. We don't say bad things about them. But we also take care of them. We support them. We care for them. We say encouraging things to them and about them. So there's lots of positive ways that we keep this commandment as well.
Well, and if you notice that, let's say you're someplace and some people, maybe you're not involved, you're just watching, and a group of people starts beating someone else up, and you say, well, I don't want to get involved in that because they might hit me. Well, maybe perhaps I ought to try to intervene, or at the very least, call the authorities, call the police. So it's not just, well, as long as I'm okay, but I even should care about people who are really in a position that are being harmed, or if someone is just verbally assaulting someone else.
Yeah, and this one might be a little harder because I think this is a little more, maybe hits closer to home for most of us. Like if you're in a group of people and you're all making fun of somebody that you don't like.
Right. And that goes into the eighth commandment that we'll get to soon.
And you're all making fun of this person, calling them names or whatever. But to actually be bold enough to say, we shouldn't do this, because it is breaking the fifth commandment.
Or to protect them and defend them, because maybe they're not talking behind their back, they're actually right there making fun of them.
Yeah.
And you say, stop it, this is my friend, or whatever. Yeah.
Is the person that God has created in his image, someone that we should love and care for.
I think as we said at the beginning, before we started this, if it's another human being, you should care for them.
Yes. Well,
Period.
That ties to the question I wanted to highlight.
Okay.
Question 61, and this is on page 88. What do we need to remember about our neighbor when dealing with issues in society? And so this is kind of covering broad issues that we have. And so in answer to this question, it says, we need to remember these things, that God creates, preserves, and protects all life. He is caring and compassionate toward all he has made, and he calls us to be so also. And so, especially as Christians, we say that this includes the baby in a mother's womb. From conception, that is a person that we need to care for and protect. And so abortion breaks the fifth commandment.
You know, the Dr. Seuss book, Horton Hears a Who, is a really good depiction of this. Like, these little people can't hardly see him, but Horton is going to care for them.
Something, no matter how small.
Yeah, people are people no matter how small.
Exactly.
Right, yeah. And so even this child that is still in its mother's womb is a life that is valued and loved, and that we should not end that life. And there are all kinds of reasons that people have. And they may not be on the surface something that seems really malicious or mean, because someone say, well, I don't think I could care for them. But there are other ways that God provides. And so we shouldn't take, and so that then comes, so that's abortion is one category. There's suicide, which means taking your own life. Euthanasia, which literally means good death, but would be the taking of someone else's life, not because even I'm mad at them, but because they say, I really want to die, will you help me die? And as tempting as that may be,
not our place.
It's not our place. And that's really tough, because that's living by faith, because what we're trusting is that God is a God of the living and a God of life, and he doesn't call us to bring death to other people.
Death is not the answer. And so remember that God has created all human life, and that we are called as Christians to care for all human life, wherever they are, baby or in the womb, baby, infant, middle-aged, older adult, wherever they are on that spectrum, we are called to care for them, whoever they are on that spectrum. Even if they're a person that maybe isn't a Christian, they believe in, they have a different religion, or what if there's somebody that has different ideas than us? What if they belong to a different political party? What if they're just a person we don't like? Well, we're called to love and care for that person. All human life.
Yes, and I think I was just thinking as you were talking. So we may think, well, that's really hard with someone that I don't know at all or don't relate to, because they don't look like me, they come from a different neighborhood, they don't speak the same language, they just seem mean. That may be difficult, but I think maybe it might be really difficult with people I know really well also.
It can be hard to love and care for the people we live with.
Because they've hurt us. And maybe we feel badly because we're inclined to hurt them. So our focus is always on God or on Jesus. And if we see other people, see ourselves and see other people in Jesus, this because we are have been loved, we are called to love others.
And to see others through the eyes of Jesus. I mean, Jesus loved and cared for all of us. He died for each and every one of us. And with this commandment, we can start to see this other person that maybe I don't like or is hard to love. Well, God loves this person. Jesus loves this person. Maybe I can learn to as well.
It makes the world not only better for them, but better for you and me, because then I don't have to carry around resentment or bitterness. Exactly. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. In fact, it may be really hard. And so the other thing that's mentioned in here is question 64, that the government does have the authority to take life. And that's a touchy area, because it gets into things like, well, is abortion legal? What about if physician-assisted suicide, another name for euthanasia, if the government endorses that? But this is like, well, a death penalty is something that actually is the taking of life, but can be a good thing to protect and preserve more life. It's an area that, Lord have mercy.
It requires us to talk about it.
Well, and you were a soldier, and you drove a giant cannon.
Paladin.
A paladin, but it was a big cannon, right? Well, it didn't shoot out like rainbows and warm fuzzies, did it?
No, 100-pound shells.
That were intended not to help people, but to hurt people. Why would that be okay? Well, there are times that, and the Catechism will talk about this, there is such a thing as a just war. And again, Lord have mercy, there are times that nations have to fight or show strength on behalf of preserving and protecting life.
But that goes back to the fourth commandment, the authority that God has given governments and militaries. That's not something that he's given normal citizens.
You didn't build your own paladin and
No.
decide to just take it out by yourself
No.
on behalf of yourself.
No.
Right.
No, we as
Yeah.
Christians, we are called to love and care for our neighbor.
Yeah. I think I'm sure we're out of time.
All right, well, we'll wrap up here, and we'll keep moving through commandments. Look for the quiz online. Quiz is online, and
Yeah, there are a bunch of quizzes out there, but there'll be a quiz for the 4th and 5th commandments together, and then we'll see you next time when we cover the 6th and 7th commandments. All right, see you.